Have you ever been outside when a storm just suddenly hit? Maybe down south where they get some really, really big storms, or in a tropical place where they just get those crazy rainstorms that just come in and dump a bunch of rain and then goes away again. Or maybe you've been watching a sporting event like a football game or a baseball game where it just starts pouring down rain and they show the fans just scrambling to find shelter, to go undercover, to get away from the storm. Maybe you've been in that situation where you've just been scrambling, running around, and you just kind of look around you and you see everybody just looking for a place to get out of the rain, get out of the storm. Just a great picture there of how God protects us in storms that I want to get to here in a second. But have you also noticed that when you see or experience things like that, that you often see people huddled together? There's just like this closeness to people. Maybe it's just trying to stay warm. Maybe it's to share the shelter. But you don't really see people at a distance running to shelter, right? They're all just kind of going together. And again, it just kind of reminds me a little bit too of the closeness of God and giving us the spiritual protection that we need. I needed this last week, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But in Psalm 91, it says, "Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty." So that verse right there alone reminds me that there are times in my life where I need to seek shelter in the Lord. I need His presence over me for whatever life is throwing at me. But not only that, I need to be close to Him. That word shadow reminds me that it's not just a protection from a distance. It's a picture like I was imagining of people running into a shelter together and kind of huddling up together. It's being close to God in the midst of a time when you needed shelter from whatever it was that was going on in your life. So last week was a time like that for me. It was Monday night. I was going to sleep. My wife and I were talking, and she said something that just, for both of us, kind of left us feeling anxious. And that whole night, I just wrestled with that anxiety of what we had been talking about. Didn't sleep very well, woke up, kind of with that feeling that you have when you know you haven't slept well, and whatever it was that was causing you anxiety is still there. And I needed to seek some shelter. I needed to be close to God. And on my way out to work, I remember just praying and talking it through with God. And at one point in that prayer, I remember just in that prayer, the Lord saying to me, "Do you trust me?" And I had to say yes or no in that, right? And that brings me back to Psalm 91, because after he talks about shelter and shadow, he says, "This I declare about the Lord. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust Him." And that's exactly where I needed to be last week. And thankfully, that's where I got. But it was only because in the midst of the storm of my emotions and the anxiety that I was experiencing, that I recognized that I needed to seek shelter in God's presence. And I needed to be so close to Him that it was as if His shadow was over me. His protection was over me, was over my thoughts. And so I hope today and this week, as you experience storms in your life, whether it's anxiety, whether it's fear, whether it's just things that come at you that are out of your control, I would encourage you to look up Psalm 91, especially those first two verses, but go ahead and read the whole Psalm and just remember who is ultimately going to give you shelter and be the one to protect you, to give you rest in the midst of the storms of your life. I know for me last week, I needed that. I needed that peace. I needed that presence of the Lord. And I hope that you have that this week too. Hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon.